Hello, hopefully you can all hear me.
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. I'll just give everyone a moment to rush back from the kitchen with their cup of tea. I'm just going to assume that's what's happening. My voice is luring everyone back. Um, so what we're going to do now is the Q&A. We've had some really, really interesting talks. I feel like lightning talks is a really great format because we learn so much in a short space of time. Just to introduce myself quickly, my name is Charles Burdett, and I facilitate design workshops and event Q&As like this. Um, I really hate meetings, so I really love doing things like this. Meetings suck mostly because nothing ever useful happens in them, and people end up talking over each other. So this format here, the fishbowl, is in this tool I've created called Workshop Tactics. This is a very brief plug. And you can get a hold of your own deck, which is for product teams to sort of stop having unproductive meetings and have short, sort of structured sessions. You can get 20% off the pre-order. There's only a limited set being made. It's kind of like a one-off project. So if you'd like to get your hands on a deck, they've been a year in the making with a lot of labor of love. And I'm hoping that the people that have them can have more delightful time together with their team. And so, yeah, one of the tactics in there is the fishbowl format that we're about to do with the Q&A. So to explain how the Q&A works, hopefully you can still see my screen. That's the catchphrase of 2020, can you see my screen? So we have all the speakers here and they have access to this board. As you can see, their cursors are flying around. And the fishbowl format works like this. Anyone sat in a yellow seat is allowed to talk. Anyone not sat in a purple seat isn't allowed to talk. So obviously this format is traditionally a physical one, and we would have physical chairs centered around in a coliseum kind of setup. And I'll just demonstrate with Holly and James, and Joanne here. So these two would be talking, and if someone would like to join in on the discussion, they simply move themselves to the empty seat. So in real life, they would actually come and sit down, and then one of the other two speakers must then go and return to the audience seat, and then the discussion continues. So that's how the format works. It's quite a nice self-facilitating session, and it means that at any point, anyone can get involved in the discussion. There may be some questions which are directed at people in particular. So in that case, I'll pull you in. If no one feels like answering, I may pick on you, but no pressure. And yeah, if you do have any questions or you haven't asked any yet, please go to sli.do, so that's Slido/accessibility. There is a clickable link in the YouTube description. Even if you don't have a question to ask, it really helps if you upvote the questions that you're interested in hearing the answer to. So I've watered the ferns, they're looking healthy, so I think we're good to go. So let me just get up the Slido here on my handy second monitor. So the first question is from Rob P, and it is, anyone who currently works within an accessibility role able to share what their accessibility progression track looks like? So if you would like to try and answer that question, speakers, please move yourselves into the two empty chairs, but don't all rush in at once. Sophie, take it away.
Awesome. I'm kind of hoping someone's going to join me at some point. Oh, there we go. Excellent. So yeah, the way that kind of accessibility ties into my role at the BBC is something that I've kind of pursued on a personal level. It's kind of something that I've decided to bring in to my software engineering. My main role is software engineer, and I've kind of taken accessibility with me as I've progressed from junior to midweight and then to senior most recently. I think at the moment, the way that I would probably go taking accessibility even further is to take that into a sort of traditional principal role. And with that, obviously, then you sort of start to mentor the people, your colleagues, the people around you a little bit more. And also, I'm hoping in doing that to kind of bring a little bit of that technical innovation into accessibility in the teams that I work with, and the framework that I'm working on at the moment with the rest of my amazing colleagues who are very supportive of all the things that we do with accessibility. So yeah, I would say that, you know, it isn't always necessary that you have to have a sort of here's a job role that has accessibility on it, especially if you're in something like software engineering, where you'd still like to be able to do that role, but also take accessibility with you and pursue that quite strongly. It's something that I've done kind of together. Daniel, do you want to picture?
Yeah, thank you. Chime in on that. I would agree with your last point there about not needing to have a particular job spec or job role to move into accessibility. My background prior to moving into my current role a couple of years ago was actually recruitment. So I'm very well aware of how much job descriptions are very much a wish list of what hiring managers are looking for. Even my own job description, part of the reason I went to university is because I didn't feel qualified to move into accessibility. Hopefully proven that that's no longer the case. We, as an organization, so obviously we do have adverts out currently, obviously for consultants in the accessibility team. We do look for, you know, technical skills in terms of, you know, web development experience. But I think ultimately what wins it is passion for wanting to do this work and be involved. We have links with local universities, like a professional pathway scheme, so people can join us from City University, for example, where I've recently studied. We have different teams. So we have, obviously, as any kind of organization, we have like a marketing team. We have a planning team that does a lot of the organizing of our schedules. We have a sales team that obviously deals with a lot of our clients, and then my team, the accessibility team. So we tend to typically have kind of junior, mid, senior, and principal roles. I would say though, one of the things that's quite nice about the way we do things is it's quite fluid. So, you know, when you join the company, maybe if you are a junior, you know, it is a lot more about training and upskilling, you know, making sure we're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were. But certainly as you gain in experience, and certainly my experience in the company is everyone's encouraged to contribute. So I'm currently mid-level. I'm more involved in things like training, writing some of our documentation, but that's not to say that anyone who's at any other level couldn't also do that. There is also an element, obviously, mentoring. So, you know, as you gain more experience, you have an opportunity to mentor other colleagues. Currently, we're kind of doing like a peer review thing as well, where we work quite collaboratively, so that, you know, I think it was mentioned in one of the previous presentations, you know, none of us are experts. We're all learning constantly. So I certainly will be stronger at certain things than others. And by collaborating on specific pieces of work, we can basically learn from each other and grow from there. But in terms of moving up through levels, it would typically be, you know, kind of getting the foundational skills in accessibility, going for accreditation, so the IAAP, doing the CPAC qualification, and the CPWA qualifications, so industry standard accessibility qualifications. Gaining experience, sharing that with the wider team, providing, you know, mentoring to other colleagues, going out to clients, delivering training, and getting more involved in more kind of strategic discussions, particularly around writing accessibility statements and implementing accessibility policies as well. I think it's quite a natural evolution in our organization.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'm going to pop myself back into the audience again, if that's all right.
Thank you, guys. I think 10 seconds left on that one, so I'll move on to the next question. So I forgot to mention I'm putting 5-minute timer for each question just so we get through enough. So I'll stop the timer there. So the next question is, how do you convince your customers of the need to pay for accessibility? So please throw yourself in the ring if you'd like to discuss that. Okay, take it away, James and Andrew.
So I'm coming from this from an agency owner's point of view. So obviously we are selling websites. The way that we address this is essentially, because this is part of our workflow, the customer is not having to pay for accessibility. It is just something that comes with what we do. If we continue to make and continue to learn and continue to evolve in what we're doing, the client will never pay. You know, this is something that flows through. If they are starting to question how long you're taking to do your testing, how long you're going through your iteration stages, then if you really need to fall back to it, you can always fall back to the kind of the overarching 1 in 5 stat. You know, 1 in 5 of us will have a disability. If we are excluding 1 in 5 of your visitors, they could be losing out on the services. And if you take it to an e-commerce point of view, you're losing out in 1 in 5 of your sales. So I hate talking about money when it comes to accessibility. It's something I love talking about, but I hate talking about the money side of things. But if you really need to talk about money from a sales point of view, that will really get the client starting to listen.
Rachel, would you like to chime in on this question?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. From a neurodiversity perspective, 59% of adaptations that you need to make for neurodiverse people cost nothing. So I think for a lot of people, they think it's going to be really expensive to make accessibility adaptations, and in a lot of cases it's just not. And as for the rest of the adaptations, they're generally not particularly expensive. So when you're talking about perhaps somebody with autism, for example, you're talking about a pair of noise cancelling headphones, or it could be just the ability to go into another room. If it's somebody with ADHD, just perhaps more, flexibility, for example, which doesn't cost anything. So yeah, 59% of adaptations cost nothing for neurodiverse people, which is one of my favorite statistics, because once people hear that, it suddenly stops being a big deal for them.
Thank you, Rachel. Andrew?
I would definitely encourage people to research. It's an American term, but it's the drop curbed effect. And it talks about how curbsides in America, they drop the curb and that's done so wheelchair users can get from one street across the road to the other. But that benefits everyone from delivery drivers to parents with a kid in a pushchair, that kind of thing. And the small changes that can be made to make a website or a service more accessible will benefit so many other unintended targets that by not making your service accessible, you are just losing out on potential customers. It's not a case of why you should pay to make your service accessible. It's, can you afford to turn down potential users?
Go ahead, Charles.
I just wanted to echo the first response to that question. Accessibility should be an inherent quality of the thing that you deliver. It's not an add-on. It's not an additional cost. It's not something that needs to be discreetly paid for. What does and what confuses people is remediation. So to come along and fix something that's broken is proven to be 30 to 100 times the cost of doing it the right way in the first place. So if you shift your thinking and your processes and your considerations as far left as possible in your design process, the cost of accessibility is free.
Thank you, Charles. Anyone want to make any last points for the last 20 seconds of this topic? Okay, I'll move on to the next one.
Oh, fucking.
So let me just stop the timer. So the next question is another very popular question from Rob P. Rob, you're a great question asker. How do you keep interest up for an accessibility champion network? So Sophie's right in there. And Hannah, take it away.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So for me, it's all about having the buy-in from the business, from your managers, and having people in the Champions Network who want to be there. So at a previous place I worked at, I don't want to go naming names for past companies, but we had a mini accessibility Champions Network, and we found that a lot of people were only a part of it because it was an objective of theirs for their 6 monthly performance reviews. And as soon as they'd had their performance review, they'd been, I've achieved the objective of being in a accessibility champions network, they sort of dropped out, and we were losing a lot of that knowledge and a lot of that a lot of the attendance. So it ended up just being like a core group of us of about 4 or 5 that would just turn up at the weekly meetings. But then when we started getting a bit more buy-in from the test leads, from the engineering managers, we found people who wanted to be a part of the network but didn't know it was a thing. So once we spread the message out there a bit more, we found that attendance and the desire to be there actually increased. So that's it for me, really, is the support from the higher ups to be able to say, yeah, you know, take some time away from your team to go do this thing is worth doing.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with having that buy-in from management, from department leaders. Within the Accessibility Champions Network itself, I think definitely keep the bar of entry low for colleagues that are interested. You don't want to come across as if you can't be in this unless you're an expert or you have X amount of experience in this. If people are interested in having accessibility as part of their job or a passion of theirs, that should be kind of encouraged at all levels. And encourage some mentoring between champions that are more experienced and less experienced. That's not necessarily that the more experienced person will always be mentoring the less experienced person. The less experienced person may bring fresh perspectives to them if they've recently joined the network. That knowledge sharing is super important between people, and also give the champions the ability in their teams, if possible, to start things like accessibility forums where people can discuss problems together, give answers, and share that knowledge again, and set up things like guilds where colleagues that aren't champions yet can also come and see what people are doing and the actions that they're taking to improve accessibility in their products and departments and teams, and then learn from that and possibly find a way into that network through those relationships.
From kind of our point of view, we've seen that bringing accessibility into training, so be that developer or content delivery training, we're finding that it engages people a lot more. When people can see the benefits of creating accessible content, we find that it becomes extremely emotive, and people aren't then just copying and pasting text from a Word document into a web page. They're taking their time to think about what impact this is going to have on a person that requires assistive technology. So I think from bringing more people and engaging more people into the network, you're allowing more people to see why we're doing the content. It's not just putting content on or doing a development just to do a job. People are seeing what effect this is having. It is engaging people so much more from that.
Yeah, I agree. That's everything from me.
Go on, Daniel.
Just in the last minute, I just add very briefly. So obviously, you know, the nature of what we do, we kind of already consider ourselves accessibility champions, but at one of our annual events, TakeShare Pro, last year, we had a fantastic talk by Sam Soloway from Verizon, who basically was kind of referring to what was just mentioned there, how they build it in as part of their onboarding, as part of their initial training. It's an idea that I think captured a lot of our imagination. It's definitely a way to, if you're not already part of that Accessibility Champions network, at least signal to you that it is, you know, a core part of the wider organization. You know, pique your interest early, as it were. And hopefully, I think one of the things they did was put people in front of their assistive technology labs, so get them hands-on with the technology and the potential issues as early as possible. Just in time.
Thank you. With 2 seconds to spare. Okay, the next question is, how do you get stakeholders to have the same level of buy-in for hidden disabilities that you do for visible disabilities? Take it away, Joe.
Hi. I worry that this is my answer to most questions, but I guess it's all down to the research. So either getting stakeholders to come to research with people with different disabilities and conditions. If they can't attend, showing them videos, using quotes. So I know we had, I worked at a disability benefit at DWP a few years ago. And we were experimenting as using time to set expectations. So saying like this application might take you 20 minutes to get through. And we had somebody, one of our candidates was both deaf and blind. So they had somebody with them that they had to touch their hands to understand what was being signed as they were going through our service. So we said, it'll take you 20 minutes to get through this application. And it took the full hour-and-a-half research session for it to kind of last, for them to get through one page. So that was just so powerful. I think using research, showing clips, try and get stakeholders to research, and there's no turning back. You can't not be affected by it, I don't think.
Go on, Andrew.
I think really everything that Joanne just said, that case studies are absolutely critical. Being able to take it from a unknown percentage of a population to an example of this person. As soon as you are able to put a face or a name to an individual that wouldn't be able to do a service or a feature, it's really hard for a stakeholder or anyone in any kind of position to turn around and say that no, that doesn't matter. So being able to get that kind of video, the photo, or it doesn't even have to be a real person at the end of the day. You can just create a scenario, but having a case study to present someone with is really important.
Rachel, I begin to hear your thoughts on this one. Rachel, is your microphone muted? Okay, Charles or Fred, if you want to continue the discussion.
I think it's sort of really important to make sure that internally you sort of are conducting meetings or presentations in a sort of safe space that allows people sort of with neurodiversity to speak up if you know it's hard for them to interact with the content maybe, and that in turn really sort of educates and it informs people. I think just to echo what was said earlier about sort of humanizing it and making people where I have ADHD myself, sharing that sort of information with colleagues, they may not sort of see that it's not front and center necessarily in my life, and but it is there, it is present, and just talking openly about that, I feel it really helps, just to sort of make people understand it, or help people to understand that this is very prevalent in the workplace, and it is a thing that you need to be thinking about on a daily basis.
Go ahead, Charles. Thank you, Fred.
All great suggestions. I would add to that in the conversation that 70% or more of disabilities are invisible, but 100% of disability is invisible when you're the author of a product and the user is on the other end of a screen. So you don't know, and you honestly don't have the right to know how many people or what their individual circumstance or context or functional need is.
Go on, Joe, you've joined the discussion. Let's hear what you have to say.
Sorry, I was just going to add, Dave Cunningham, who's co-hosting this event, co-organised this event, is doing some great work at Co-op about making accessibility, not just about kind of disability and conditions, but making it relatable to people, to everyday circumstances and situations. So I don't know if Dave's on, but I know he's got like a Twitter, accessibility rhymes possibly, where it's just trying to say, like, if you're on a train and you're going through a tunnel, you're going to lose signal. Like, it's trying to make good usability means better usability for everybody. But yeah.
I've just posted a link to the Twitter in the YouTube channel.
A little plug.
I think we might have lost Rachel from the Zoom chat. I'll take the silences.
Yeah, we'll try and get her added back in, Charles. She's just tweeted us. Thanks.
I'll move on to the next question, which is from Jenny V. And it is, what are your go-to case studies to support accessibility to new clients? James jumped in. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, it's funny this question comes up because we're going through our case studies as we speak, to be honest. So I'm not going to name names because some of them is still work in progress, but I think we've had an extremely good one recently with a university who have known that their website isn't accessible, and it's something that obviously we took on later on, but they thought about their intranet and how that should become accessible as well. They are thinking completely globally here. They're thinking about their staff as well as essentially bringing in people from the outside coming in to pay for money for the university. So that's been fantastic. Another one that springs to mind is a local authority that we have worked with. So it kind of goes back to kind of the why should I pay for accessibility? They didn't want to pay for a full redesign and a full redevelopment. We had to keep their councillors on board. As picky as they are, they needed to make sure that it stayed the same. So the reason why I bring that up is we can show that we can take an inaccessible website, make it look pretty much the same, I'd say 90% the same, and make it accessible. And that's just by kind of taking things from under the hood and working through it that way. So we're keeping councillors happy because everything's staying the same from that point of view. We are keeping editors happy because we're not changing their work processes, we're just making sure that's working. And also from a usability point of view, we're just making improvements, slight improvements there. So they've been two very good case studies that we've worked with. And kind of very briefly, the third one was essentially we've personalized making a a prospectus. So rather than having to go through troves and troves of inaccessible PDFs, we've created an interactive tool that allows people to browse through courses and kind of modules, and it allows them to build it themselves. So they're taking ownership of something they've built in an accessible manner.
Just realised I didn't set the timer there. Rookie mistake. Anyone else want to chime in on this one? If not, we can move on to the next question.
Giles, sorry,
Yep.
I think Rachel's in the waiting room. You've got control. Are you all right to add her back in?
Yes.
Cheers, mate.
Let me see how to do that. I'm not sure how.
Should have a little participants button.
What I'll do is just because I don't know how, I'm going to release control quickly.
Do you want to give control back to Dave?
Oh no, here I see it here. Sorry. She should be joining now.
Perfect. Thank you. Cheers, mate.
Hello, Rachel. Hopefully you can hear me and you're back in now.
You're on mute, Rachel.
Can you hear us, Rachel? Are you in okay? Yeah. If you'd like to, I saw that you wanted to talk about the previous question, which was how do you get stakeholders to have the same level of buy-in for hidden disabilities that you do visible? I was wondering if you wanted to have a few moments to talk about that.
Yeah, all I was going to add to that, I thought the points that were already made were really, really valuable and bang on. From a neurodiversity perspective, we are 30 to 50% more productive, according to studies by the Harvard Business Review and JP Morgan Chase. And I think one way of getting people on board with people with hidden disabilities is to show our strengths. And I think everybody with a hidden disability, not just neurodiverse people, do have some kind of strength, whether that's first world experience or another skill that makes up for their supposed deficiency or the challenges they have. All of us have something extra to offer that people without those disabilities don't have.
Thank you for that, Rachel. Sorry that we lost you there. It's good to have you back. I'll ask the next question now, which is, how do you recommend recruiting participants with accessibility needs for user testing, and in brackets, have struggled with this in the past? From Anonymous. So if anyone would like to answer that question, throw yourself in to the chairs. Not all at once, though.
Sorry, guys, I feel like I'm hogging this bit, so do just tell me to stop talking. It is hard because people with disabilities don't always want to disclose. Rightly so. We use, there are other establishments out there, but we use the Shore Trust for this reason, because they have a pan-disabled team that allow us to take through wireframes, designs, and developments to them to get some advice. You learn from that, and you can then offer your advice, maybe as a person that doesn't have a disability but can demonstrate assistive technology or talk through these areas. If you are trying to get people locally in, you have to go for, you are making a difference. It's the same as doing any type of user research. If you are going to do that, think about how you are going to be recruiting them. Are you essentially, are you doing user testing on a 10th floor without a lift? Because then straight away you know that you're making your own tests inaccessible. So everything that you do, make sure that you consider the people within there, so they are very, very aware that they are trying to make a difference with yourselves.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I would just add to that last point there. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not directly involved in our recruitment for our diverse user testing sessions, so I can't speak on behalf of that team. But certainly, you know, my office in London, it's actually a basement office. It has an accessible lift to get into reception, but then another lifts to get downstairs. So a lot of what we do as the kind of moderators of the sessions is make sure that people know where they're going. Particularly like the point in, I think it was Rachel's slide possibly, about showing your building, the photo of the building, making sure they have a point of contact, because if you are passing people between different teams to kind of book them in to a pool of participants, they may not necessarily be aware of who is the best point of contact, particularly with regards to things like travel allowances and things. And then, you know, in some cases, I mean, I work in a central London office, so making sure we have a point of contact who can meet people at the station if that's their preference, and partner them to the office. You know, all the general things about the office itself, making sure that, you know, there's no health and safety hazards, particularly anything both low level on the floor, but also kind of high level things that you may not be aware of in your day to day. So although I can't directly answer the question of how to encourage them, I think providing an inclusive experience for the participants that are arriving would hopefully feed back through the networks to kind of encourage more people to collaborate with us.
Andrew?
It's not really much I can say on this topic, but I would say reach out to organizations. I know Everyone Can actually does some testing for certain services for the BBC, because they also have offices based in Manchester. So there is probably already existing networks of individuals that you are looking for to test your services. It's just a case of finding out where the best hub of them is and then reaching out.
Cool, thank you, Andrew. I'd like to ask one last question, if possible, because I think it's a very good one, from Emma. And it is, what do you think is the thing that most changes people's minds about accessibility being important? This will be our last question for the Q&A. Go ahead, Sophie.
So one of the things that sometimes particularly if I'm having some challenges introducing a new team to our platform to accessibility, is that we run a sort of session where we introduce them to assistive technology and ask them to kind of consider the products that they're super familiar with through this different lens that they've probably never looked at their code or designs through before. And you very quickly find that when you show them what that experience is like, and especially if there are areas that are problematic for accessibility, if you show them that and you give them that very real kind of in their face view of what's going on there, 95% of the time the entire room goes, ah, right, okay, yeah, we get it now. Whoops. And that is, you know, it's just one of the ways that you can bring those experiences into kind of perspective for people who maybe haven't experienced it themselves, that don't necessarily have those disabilities or neurodivergence, but that you know, we've also got tools that you can use throughout things like development. There's extensions for browsers, there's tools you can download to simulate experiences of people who have various different disabilities, and yeah, giving them those tools, in my experience, has been very, very useful. And obviously, if you have people who are willing to speak up about their kind of experiences daily, kind of living with their own challenges or disabilities, or you know, the way that they see the world and their perspectives, getting people to go to talks about that would also be awesome, to get them to listen to other people's experiences, and as much as possible, yeah, get them empathizing with that, and then take that back to the work that they're doing.
Great, thank you very much, Sophie. And that concludes the Q&A. So thank you very much for everyone for participating and listening. This format is available as a template you can use if you'd like to run your own. I pasted it on the YouTube channel, but if you go on the Workshop Tactics website, it's in the blog. I'll pass over back to Chris Gibbons now, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Charles. So there we have it. First Accessibility Manchester event is over. From my perspective, it's been a long time coming, and especially given the current state of the world, I'm sort of super thankful that we've actually managed to pull it off, and I hope everyone who's been joining the stream has enjoyed it. We'll be tweeting a link out from tonight's event so people can catch up. On a personal note, I wanted to extend my thanks again to the speakers tonight. So Joanne from Co-op, Sophie from the BBC, Andrew from Everyone Can UK, Rachel from Sparkle Class, Holly from Barclays, Daniel from AbilityNet, James from Hex Productions, Hannah from Foot Asylum, Fred from Babylon Health, and Charles from the W3C working group. And also huge thanks to Charles for running the Fishbowl Q&A. Secondly, just want to, again, thanks to tonight's sponsors Co-op, who have kindly provided us with the Zoom account, and MyClearText for their real-time captions that we've been fortunate to have tonight. And just before I end the event, I really want to call out the amazing work that Dave Cunningham and Stu Hull have done behind the scenes to ensure that tonight's event was able to actually go ahead. I think it's fair to say that without their incredible contribution, tonight wouldn't have been possible. And that just leads me to say that planning is already underway for our second event. So again, keep your eyes peeled on Twitter and Eventbrite for more details. And with that, we'll sign off. Thank you all again, and good night, everybody.